This is the video notes for 9.1D, calculating the standard deviation. The standard deviation is another way of describing the spread of the data. How far apart is the data from the mean? That's what the standard deviation is. The smaller the standard deviation, the closer the data is to the mean. So let's fill that in here in our first space. The bigger the standard deviation, the data is more widely spread out from the mean. So for example, if you get a standard deviation of 2, that means that each data point for that list is on average 2 away from the mean. If you get something like 20, then each data point is on average 20 away from the mean. So that data would be very spread out as opposed to a standard deviation of 2, which is very close together. We're not going to calculate the standard deviation by hand. Instead, we're going to calculate it using our calculators. And I'll show you how to do that. So we're going to calculate the standard deviation of points scored by different players for basketball. So we have a table here for Mitchell, Leonard, and James, and these are the points they've scored in different games. And we're going to find 2 things for them. We're going to find the mean, or their average, and their standard deviation, how far apart their data is from the mean, from the average. Okay, so I will first show you how to input the data into your calculator. This is what I do if I want to add a list of data to my calculator. So I hit the stats button right here, and then I'm going to hit edit, and I'm going to add my list of data to one of the lists. So I have 3 lists here visible. There are more lists as you go to the right, but I'm just going to use list 1. So let's add a list of data. So I'm adding the list of data from the 9.1D notes for Mitchell. So I'm going to say 23, enter, 25, enter, 22, enter, 46, enter, 25, enter, 0, enter, 4, enter, 16, enter, 19, enter, 32, enter. Now I've entered all the information for Mitchell, and it is ready to go in my calculator. Once you've added your data to your calculator, then the next step is to calculate the mean and the standard deviation through the calculator. So I will go ahead and show you how to do that now. Once I've entered a list of data into my calculator, then I can hit the stats button and have my calculator calculate one variable statistics. So I hit the stats button and go right to where it says calculate, and that first option right here, number 1 variable statistics, is the one that I want. So I hit enter. I'm going to use list 1, that's where my data is, and I'm going to go down to calculate, hit calculate, and what this does is it calculates 5 things for me. It calculates the mean. That's the first one where it says X with a bar over it. And then the second one is the sum of the data points. That's that weird backwards E with the X. And then sum X squared is the next one. And then the sample standard deviation is the 4th one. And the 5th one, which is what we're after, is sigma X. That's that weird Greek symbol right there, sigma. That is the standard deviation for our population. So looking at this, this quickly calculates 2 really important things. The mean, 21.2, and then 12.4, which is the population standard deviation. So basically this tells us that Mitchell's average for points scored is 21.2, and then his standard deviation, so how far away each of his data points are from the average is 12.4. So his data is pretty spread out. Now that we have Mitchell's data, we can add that to our notes. So I'll go ahead and do that. So for Mitchell, his average was 21.2. And then his standard deviation was pretty spread out, 12.4. So each of his data points was on average 12.4 from his mean. Now we would go ahead and do the same thing for the two other players, Leonard and James. We would open up the stats menu in our calculator and put in their information. And I'll show you how to delete a list so it's ready to have you input the data for Leonard. This is how you clear a list of data that someone else has already entered in your calculator. So you go to the stat button, and then you go to number 1, which is edit, so hit enter, and you see under list 1 that I already have a set of data already logged in. What if I want to clear that and I want to put a different set of data in there? So what you do is you go up to L1, hit clear, and then hit enter, and it'll clear the list. Once we have the data for the 3 players, then we can decide what it means. So it looks like Mitchell has an average of 21.2, so let's write that down. And that his standard deviation, how far apart his data points are from his average, is 12.4, so it's pretty spread out. So let's change that color to red. So Mitchell's average, let's actually use the word mean. Mean is 21.2 and his data is 12.4 on average away from the mean. Okay, same thing for Leonard's data. So we can say Leonard's mean is 29.7, so he's got a much higher average. That's pretty awesome. And his data is 9.2. So he has a higher average and his data is closer together. That's pretty good. He's doing really well. It's 9.2 on average away from the mean. On average away from the mean. Okay, for James, we'll just write a similar sentence. So we'll say James mean is 16, so much lower, and his data is 11.4 away from the mean. Okay, so that is what we're seeing. The second example on our notes gives us 3 data sets and asks us to find the standard deviation for each one. And so what we'll need to do is pick up our calculators and plug in the data for each data set one at a time. So for data set 1, we go to stat, we type in 22, enter, 23, enter, 23 again, 24, 25, 25, 25, 25, 26, 27, and then we go to stat again, and we go over to calculate, and our have it calculate the one variable stats, and then we get that the standard deviation for the first data set is 1.4. So I'll say sigma x for the top one is 1.4. Then go ahead and clear your list and add the next data set. Looks like we need to go to Calc, Edit, highlight L1, hit Clear and Enter, and then put in the following data set: 20, 22, 23, 23, 25, 25, 27, 28, 29, and 30. And then go and have it calculated. So hit Calc, hit Stat, and then calculate for your list one, and we end up with 3.1. And go ahead and do the same thing for data set 3. Clear the data, add the new data set: 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26. Actually, 24 appears twice, so 24, 24, 25, 26, 26, 28, 28. Have it calculate, and we get standard deviation of 2.2. Which one has the smallest standard deviation? Looks like it's the first data set, so data set 1. And that's because sigma x is 1.4. And then which one has the largest data set? There's a T missing there. It will be data set 2 with a sigma 3.1. Okay, and just visually we can actually see this because data set 1, the data is much more grouped together as opposed to data set 2. All the data is way more spread out. If you need another reminder on how to plug this information into your calculator, if you go to the back page of the notes, it has all the directions there on how to enter data, how to clear a pre-existing data list, how to get the one variable stats. So there's a good reminder there for you. I hope this was helpful, and good luck on your 9.1D practice.